Welcome to Animorphs Anonymous, the podcast where we casually discuss the Animorphs one book at a time.
I'm Kaycie.
And I'm Alex.
And we're here to talk you through the plot of each book.
But more accurately, take you on tangent trips, factoid forays, and say, well, actually, as much as possible.
Join us on the 1st and the 15th of each month, and we'll take you along on our mission.
And we promise to have you back under the 2-hour time limit.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings who landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army.
Hey.
Hey, you.
Hey, you.
Oh my gosh.
Holy shit, we're back.
We are.
After what is probably, well, this will be even the leastest amount of time for the listeners because there will have been 2 weeks in a row of episodes.
Because we love you, audience. We like to spoil you.
We want to spoil you with our dulcet tones.
I enjoy that.
But man, how about them Andalite Chronicles?
Oh man, that was out of control.
That was completely out of control, yes. Oh. That was a mission where somebody put Rachel in charge, and we all know you should never do that.
Unless you want to die.
Exactly. And that pretty much sums up recording the Andalite Chronicles.
We all died.
We all died.
Kaycie was a drunken mess in her chair, sitting about 3 feet below the microphone at one point, so...
Yeah, and I mean, let's part the curtains a little bit. What we posted was 2-hour recordings. What we did was sat for 6 hours straight and recorded for 6 hours straight.
Oh, man.
It was a marathon.
Yeah.
Oh.
And we were
so
drinking.
We were drinking, and I think we did almost die. I mean, we almost took Stephanie out. She had a headache and was dehydrated by the end of it. I'm not exaggerating, lying, or making it up. I did lose 4 pounds that day.
Did you?
I seriously did. Between that day and the next day, recording Andalite Chronicles, I lost 4 pounds.
Wow.
It was a marathon.
I just had an upset tummy, and I was drawing very dirty things in my sketchbook. That's all I remember.
That sounds like a pretty good day, actually.
Hooray!
For everybody but Stephanie, who I just sent home with a migraine and dehydrated.
But we survived.
We survived. We
and
survived
now we're here
that.
with you.
And now we're back.
Back to
and everything's changed, and yet it's the same.
Yeah, lots of stuff happened.
It's familiar, but not too familiar.
Aww.
But not too not familiar.
Aww. Ma-bim bam.
Aw, ma-bim bam.
The good boys. God. I just finished listening to the Adventure Zone balance arc again.
Oh my God.
I think like last week. Holy shit, that was a good podcast, y'all. You should listen to that if you haven't, which I'm sure you have listened to it, but do it again.
And isn't that one of the ones we're related to on iTunes with
it
this
is.
podcast?
It
yeah.
is.
Okay. It's a solid recommendation. It really did kind of towards the end of it have the same well, it was a really intense sort of feeling and a really intense sort of arc. And I had the same like sad going away feelings I have every time I finish the Animorphs series. So
oh, no.
I really did it hard. It has that, it was more the grandiose feeling, I think, than like the depressing feelings. Like,
sure.
Oh, this insane arc just concluded in this way that makes me like sad and happy, and like it's that ability to evoke that complex mix of emotions, I think, that not many things have.
The bittersweet symphony.
Yeah, exactly. There you
Sorry.
Right until you got to symphony, I was like, damn, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Hashtag the 90s.
Hashtag, I do hashtag the 90s every time we post these.
Good. Oh my god, speaking of the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the new Jumanji movie
Was
a
it
couple
good?
nights ago. No.
Aww.
feel from the original, which we all treasure as one of the greatest movies of the 90s, if not of all time. I think.
Yet another movie we have referenced on the podcast before.
Have we?
We did when they threw the Pamelite crystal into when the dog dropped the Pamelite crystal.
When Jake gave it to Marco gave it to a dog.
Yeah, and we were like, there's a beach where all the evil shit washes up. The Jumanji board.
Yes.
I'm still upset about that.
Yeah.
And, like, I want to defend his choices, like, on some level. Like, I want to at least be able to be like, well, to play devil's advocate, blah, blah, blah. But I can't defend that.
No. I feel like each of the characters has done at least one thing, that I am not even going to try and defend them on. I'm just going to be like, you're dumb, the end.
I could think of, like, when you said it, I started thinking of them. So, like, I'm just interested now. We could trade, like, one for one. Like, I'll start with Jake, since he's the leader. I don't know why I hate to explain that. I'm so sorry. I think morphing in his bedroom in his house while his parents and brother were there.
That was so dumb. I
can't defend that.
Huh. Oh, Cassie morphing that squirrel in a room full of predators.
Oh, see, I was going to say Cassie swimming with the dolphins at night.
Oh, yeah, that was pretty dumb. But you could say Rachel flying to the gardens and getting in the cage with the grizzly bear and morphing the grizzly bear with no one else around.
Yeah, that was real dumb. I wanted to get to Rachel last because I was trying to figure out which one I was going to say.
So many things.
There were.
Where do I begin?
Yeah, she's impulsive.
Yeah.
Oh Marco? What did Marco do?
Marco the dog thing.
Oh, yeah, the dog thing. That was a little reckless. When he ran out in traffic, too. Tobias, he's always putting himself in harm's way, especially in this particular book that we're about to talk about. He did some dumb shit.
Aww.
And yet he did some great shit. Axe, when they said, don't eat the candy, don't get carried away, and he proceeded to get carried away, and he assaulted a small child for their candy.
I can't forgive you.
Give me the brown globules.
Alright, so, this book.
Yeah, this book.
Oh, man.
This book. Oh, my God.
Our baby boy.
Yeah, I was so excited to read this book. And you were excited to visit Tobias again, so how was your visit?
Yay! It was great!
Aww.
Very, very different feel from his first book, I think. Like, some of the same topics, but this one was much less full of dread, I think. Like, I don't know, I feel like the past few books have been, the normal amount of heavy, but I feel like the balance between the humor and the tragedy is much better now. Like, the earlier books, I was just kind of like, oh, God, my heart. These poor kids. But now I kind of feel like, all right, that's kind of terrible, but, at least Marco said this funny thing,
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel?
That made me wonder, I wonder if we're just getting used to it, or because the kids are getting, like, more calloused to all the bad things that happen, that it's less of an event now. Oh. I'm wondering, because it's not like things are getting any better. If anything, they're getting worse, right?
Right.
So, but maybe they're...
It feels less oppressive, though. But yeah, I don't know if that's because we're getting used to it as readers and we kind of brace ourselves with every new book, or if the kids are just kind of like, oh yeah, this horrible thing happened, but worse has happened, it's fine. Yeah,
and that's a confidence, or even like Marco was saying in the dog book, where like the scar tissue is kind of healing over, so they're moving on, they're getting past it. Like, they've been through this before, so like the wounds are just healing, and they've, like when you get a callus, there's like kind of a layer over that now where it's not as bad now that it's healed up a little.
Damn.
Stronger.
Damn.
That was a weird way to say that.
No, it was good.
But yeah, like, and I think this book in particular, just going back to your question to me, I think it was more balanced because it was, Tobias was doing such a good and almost joyous thing, and like they were just so, the Hork-Bajir are just so simple and happy that this has happened, and it's their exultation at, like, not to like spoil this book, which we're about to talk about, but like their escape is kind of like just created this sense of such joy for them, and that's almost catching on in the Animorphs as they go through this with them.
Yeah.
That's, I think.
Yeah.
That's my take.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. Well, I'll start doing the play-by-play then, so we can get further into that, because there's so many topics to cover here.
Sure. Yeah,
this
go for
is an amazing book.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, so good. All right. So, we open up with Tobias telling us about how he's basically a hawk now, and even though his friends are human, he feels pretty confident in being a hawk now, and he's really kind of becoming comfortable with himself, and that for that reason, because he's a hawk, he doesn't feel the need to kind of hide away like the other Animorphs do. He's not as intense about security, because you won't find him. You know, he lives in the woods, whatever.
Yeah, this is where it felt very different from the other book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, he seems okay with being a hawk in this book. Wait, what?
Mm-hmm. Did you think it was a disconnect, or just...
No, I mean, just because it's been a really long time since we've been with Tobias, like, I kind of expected him to be a little more comfortable in his current form.
Yeah,
and
that's fair.
I think that showed, yeah.
Yeah, oh, how long has it been? Like, what? Months?
Yeah.
It's been a really long time. I mean, he said it's been less than a year at some point during this book, but it's been months. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it even opens as part of this opening sequence. He's hunting and he lands on the mouse and like just kind of nails it. And a couple times during this book, he talks about how like a job well done, even if the job is killing a mouse, is still satisfactory. Mm-hmm. Like he's just kind of comfortable with himself.
Aw, character growth.
Yeah, and it's character growth that happened behind the scenes because we weren't in his head, but I don't feel like it was a disconnect at all.
Right.
Yeah. So, that's where we open, and then he goes flying around talking about how awesome flying is, and I wrote, lucky bastard. Mm-hmm. So, he kind of checks in on the Animorphs one at a time, and I loved this natural open here that, like, because, you know, normally we do our run-through, but this one it was like he was flying over, and he saw Axe first in the woods, and he kind of, like, said hi and checked in, and then he flew towards the school, and he saw Jake there, and Jake was falling asleep, and he gave this really funny image of, like, you wouldn't believe that the savior of the world, or the person you've put, like, that the whole world's fate rests in his hands, is, like, falling asleep in his math class with, like, sneakers and a jacket. So that was funny. Yeah. And Cassie was there with him. She wakes him up. He goes by Marco, and I loved this so much that he saw that Marco was talking, and then the class started laughing, and even the teacher who, like, then, like, made this face like she didn't want to be laughing, and she was, like, exasperated, but then she laughed anyways. And that was, like, such a perfect way to, like, describe Marco without describing him.
Yeah, I think, she did a really good job describing all three of those kind of characters. Mm-hmm. You know, Jake, who's kind of, like, longing to be normal kid instead of leader of this Vandalites group. And then Cassie, who's the helpful one, who's, you know, trying to keep everybody, you know, in line, in, like, her nice way. And then Marco, the jokester. So, I really liked the natural opening, too. Kind of showing us, rather than being like, this is Marco, he's the class clown. This is Cassie, she's the nature girl. Like, I really like being shown that.
I totally agree, and I love that you said that, because I didn't even, like, make that deep of a connection on Jake and Cassie. And then when you said that, I'm like, duh! Like, that's exactly what she was doing, but it was just so, like, natural and flowing that, like, I just, like, I got that. And, like, I moved, I didn't even realize. She's fooling my brain!
Damn.
That's awesome. This is why the writing is just so incredible in these books. Sidebar. I feel like I've said that so many times. Yes, sidebar.
Is this our first recording since you met her?
Yeah. Oh my God, this is our
it?
first. Yeah, it feels like so long ago because so much has happened.
Do you feel different?
Wasn't. Yeah, you know what? Let me put my notes aside for just a second and let's talk K.A Applegate.
Okay.
Because
I suppose we could have saved this for the end, but...
No, it's going to happen right now in the middle of our opening.
Okay.
Because I don't know. I don't
sure.
know.
It's informal. It's fine. Yeah.
It's informal. It's an informal discussion. Plus, like, you know, we did kind of bring ourselves out of it a little bit to talk about Catherine and how wonderful her writing is. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so I got the opportunity to meet her. God, it was probably only like a couple weeks ago, but seriously, it feels like years. Like, literally so much shit has happened to Kaycie and I in the past few weeks. But I digress. I went to a book signing. She was doing it for her new book that's coming out, Endling, which I also bought. Have not read yet. I'm sorry. I'm really busy reading Animorphs. I can't do that yet.
She's gonna kill you now.
Well, right. She's also gonna murder me. But I bought Endling. It looks really good from the little chunks I've gotten to read through. It's the same incredible writing we've come to expect and love. But I brought Animorphs books, and I was like the 9th person in line or whatever. So like I'm standing in a room with like, you know, 80 people behind me that are like wanting to get books signed and say hi, and they are all children basically. And then there's me, and I walked up there and I put Endling down, and stacked on top of Endling was 3 Animorphs books, or 2 Animorphs books. I wanted 3, but I took one out at the last minute because I felt like I was being too selfish. And I like just plopped him down on the desk, and she saw the Animorphs books kind of like tumble out past Endling, and she was like, I knew from your age right away that you were here for Animorphs. And I was like, yeah, and I felt so embarrassed because like I am so bad at meeting people, and she like, and also I was starstruck. I mean, this is a woman who I have like been in my head, I have loved her characters and everything inside of her mind for almost 30 years basically, or like 20 some odd years. So it was like I was totally starstruck. So I went and we started doing the signing things. And I was trying so hard to hold it together. I was like, oh my gosh, I like love the book so much. And, you know, these are so wonderful and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it's really like weird, like how, like, or I didn't say weird, but I was like, it's really like crazy how much of this kind of informs me. I'm like, I have an Animorphs tattoo. I do a podcast. Like I was just like babbling at her. But like everything I said, it was like, she's like, you have a tattoo? I'm like, oh yeah. And I showed her and she was like, I love that. And she gave me a hug, and she's like, that's incredible. She's like, it's like, it's just, you mattered. It was like, that's amazing. She's like, it's so simple and blah, blah. She's like, I love it. She's like, makes me want to get a tattoo. And I'm like, oh, get the same one if you want, kind of thing. I'm like, I don't care. And she's like, I want that tattoo. I'm like, get it. I don't care. You know, obviously it's yours. And then she's at some later point, I was talking about the podcast, like, oh yeah, we do like, my friend and I do a podcast. We love it so much. And she was like, what's the podcast name? I'm like, oh, Animorphs Anonymous. And like, we moved on. And then at the end of our conversation, as I was leaving, she goes, wait, let me write down what your podcast name was. And I was like, oh my God, she's actually going to listen, which is really embarrassing. I'm so sorry. If you are listening and you made it to this episode, I'm so sorry, but I love you so much. She'd have to make it through Chronicles first. That's clearly not happening. Yeah, and like she was just so sweet, and I told her like, hey, I worked in animal rehab for years because of Cassie, and she like, that's when she like was like, oh my God, she jumped up, gave me another hug, and she was like, that is amazing. She's like, yeah, Cassie's my character, like that's who I relate to, that's like my girl. And I'm like, I know. And so like we literally ended up talking for about 5 minutes, and like I even tweeted this at her later. I was like, I was so excited to meet one of my heroes, and I think this fandom is probably the thing I've loved for the longest amount of time. And I was like, it was so incredible to meet somebody that you've loved for this long, and not only did they not destroy your expectations of meeting someone, but like she was so caring and so engaged, and she made time for me. Like I never felt like she was just trying to rush me through and sign something, and like I have, 100 more people to go through. Like she would have stayed. I felt like she would have stayed and talked to me all day if that's what happens. Like if we got off on topics, and it was so incredible and wonderful. And she's an amazingly sweet woman, and hearing her talk about, you know, Animorphs and Endling and everything. Like, it was so cool to get inside her head, and she's so good with children, which was, like, crazy, because I'm like, oh, yeah, like, I was their ages when I was reading Animorphs. Like, this would be her talking to me when I was a kid. Like, that's crazy to me. So it was just a very cool experience. I proceeded to immediately afterwards get into the car, not drive anywhere, and scream at Kaycie for half an hour straight.
Yes.
I don't know that you talked at all. I think I just yelled at you.
I remember when you told me that you told her about our podcast, I was like, oh my god, is she gonna listen to our podcast?
And I would have said no, except for the fact that before I walked away, she stopped me and had, like, she made me, like, sounded, spell it out, whatever, so she could write down the name of it. And I was like, oh shit, she might actually listen to this. And I hope, even though sometimes we're critical and we, you know, joke and stuff, I hope it really comes through how much, like, I truly love this series. And I think I hope I'm not overstepping and saying that you're starting to love the series. Kind of.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, awesome. Because and she did ask at one point, this was the moment where it fell off the rails for me, and I thought, okay, now I'm insane fan. She asked if I had forgiven her yet for the ending, and I said, and this is the exact tone I used, the exact voice I used, I said, I tattooed it on my body. So that's about where it fell off the rails for me. And then I did, as I was leaving, say, like, something like to the effect of, I feel like every life choice I made can come back to Animorphs. And then I'm like, oh, fuck, I've crossed a line. I'm horrible. And that's when I escorted myself out. I'm like, enough now. Like,
it's quote Love Actually.
It did just quote Love Actually.
That's amazing.
Son of a bitch.
Oh my god.
And it's perfect because I, of course, look a lot like Andrew Lincoln, but no. No, it's perfect because it's like the person I've loved forever, and that was my love letter of cards and telling it's carolers, and I just threw cue card after cue card of how much I loved Animorphs at her. And then I'm just like to myself, enough now.
This is a great metaphor.
It was weird. But yeah, she's so, like, I can't even express how wonderful of a person she is. And it was, like, honestly the most incredible meeting any, like, famous person I've met that I've admired for a while. Like, she blows them all completely out of the water. She's incredible.
Yay!
So that's my middle of the intro K.A Applegate rant?
Oh,
I don't know. But
amazing. I'm so glad you got to do that. Like, that's a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity.
Yeah, the cards all fell into place at the right time.
Definitely.
They really did. And I am, like, just amazed that I was able to do that. And I wish now completely unprepared, of course, I wish I had the name of who it was that told me about it in the Animorphs group, because he was able to go and see her, like, in Atlanta or something, like, a couple months before. Oh. And he was the one that was like, she's on tour right now, you guys. You should check out where the cities are. And, like, I'm, like, pretty close between two large-ish cities. But she came to, like, a small town near me that's, even, like, hella close. And I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Like, let's do this. Like, she's right in my backyard, basically. And then she had her, like, sister-in-law or brother-in-law or brother and sister-in-law, something like that. They came out, too, and that's when they're like, she lived here. And I'm like, of course she fucking lived here. She's lived everywhere. I should have known. Like, I'm an idiot for thinking otherwise. But, yeah, it was just so cool. She's so incredible. I might move this to the end. I might edit this to the end of the podcast.
Oh.
Or the beginning. No, you know what? Fuck it. We'll leave it. Who cares? But yeah,
it's fine.
It's fine. But yeah, she's so incredible. And I'm glad that I'm sure you're glad too, for your headset, that I've modulated my voice now to talk about it in normal human tones instead of high-pitched dog whistles.
No one would be able to hear that.
Except for Marco.
Yep.
In his ill-fated dog book. But yeah, that's my Applegate story.
I love it.
was truly incredible. And if anybody ever has the opportunity to meet her, I so highly recommend it. I can't even tell you. So.
Yay!
Yay! Yay. And I will check back in later if I ever get a chance to read Endling before this podcast is over, which, God, I hope I do. But, yeah, if I ever get the chance to read that, I'll check back in. Or maybe, we'll end the podcast a few years down the road, and I'll just one day update it, like 3 months after we end it, and be like, so let me tell you about Endling. Yeah.
That
so
could be one of our, that could be one of our other podcast episodes.
It could be that.
I could get it too. We could both read it, and then we'll do a review.
We should.
Yeah.
We should also give ourselves a really long lead time on that, because it's not at all like Animorphs. It's a very large, dense book.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we
Cool.
should, because it really does. Like, I've skimmed like through the book and like, just because I was sitting there and she was talking about it, so I was like reading parts of it while we were doing the whole thing, and it really does seem really good. And one of the characters is like a magical fennec fox.
Aww.
Yeah, so it's up our alley.
That's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And it's all about species extinction, which, yay.
It's an important topic.
Yeah, it is. It is a very important topic.
Well, speaking of people going extinct.
Right, okay, so back to reality. Whoa, there goes
gravity.
So Tobias he checks back in with all of the characters, as we were saying. The last one he sees is Rachel, who is going to the gymnasium, which is not attached to the school for whatever reason. So she like walks outside through the doors, and he asked her what she's doing, and of course she can't respond. So like she gives a little wave. And also, I don't know why this stood out to me, but he described her, like, small wave as it was just, like, 2 fingers twinkling. And I was like...
that's weird.
It's weird, but, like, you could picture it, right?
I guess.
Okay, I got a very, like, intense reaction to that particular descriptive word. I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about when you say twinkling. But, yeah, it was a little weird.
But was she moving, like, I pictured her kind of lifting her arm up and then, like, waving them both up and down at the same time, but I don't think that's right.
I think because she was, like, carrying, well, this is what I pictured. She was carrying her binder, so I imagine she was just, like, she had one hand on it, and she just kind of, like, lifted 2 of the fingers and did, like, a quick, like, little, like, jazz hands wave, kind of.
Sure.
I don't know.
Spirit fingers.
Spirit fingers wave. I don't know.
Anyway,
I just thought it was a great descriptive word, but also very weird.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
so
okay.
So she does her wave, and then she opens her folder so that he can see the note that she's taking to like the gym for whatever teacher. But he also notices another paper in there saying that she's won an award and there's going to be a ceremony, and I never once wrote down the name of the award. I just know it was for being an outstanding student.
I had something like that in K through 8 school. It was Student of the Month. I was nominated a lot because I'm really awesome.
We had that too, and then you got a bumper sticker saying like my student is in like honor of the month. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I got a little ribbon too.
Aw.
Yeah.
I never got it, so I don't know.
Oh, it's dumb.
It was middle school. It was bad, obviously. I just told you guys how my math teacher berated me for being dumb. I clearly did not get an award for anything. So
she should have gotten an award for being horrible.
A PhD in horribleness.
Oh, amazing.
That was all I could think of. But yeah, so he sees the award, and he kind of has this moment. It was one of the few times it was one of the times that we flash back to him being like, I kind of wish I was human for that, because that's something Rachel would invite everybody to and be excited about. It's also kind of foreshadowing. But yeah. So he's kind of torn between that. And then he tells her about how he's taking out the pool entrances, and he invites her over for flying. That might be out of order, But he invites her to come flying so he can show her like what he's staked out. And then he goes like meandering around for a little bit. It kind of cuts to him like looking at other stuff, and then he sees her flying towards him as an eagle, and he goes and starts showing off and like hot dogging around because he's more nimble. So that's pretty funny. Rachel completely ignores it.
Like, I feel like they're on a bird date and he's like trying to put the moves on and be all cool, and then she's just kind of like, whatever, you're a dork.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, that's so adorable though.
I know. I like their little bird dates.
Yeah.
They're dating and they don't even know it.
I think they do, because the next thing he says is they have a Romeo and Juliet situation on their hands.
Yeah, but he said that internally. Like, have they said but they have kind of. Like, when they were gonna die in the third book, and he was like, Rachel, I never told you, and she's like, I already knew.
Yeah, and we speculate that they said it in the fifth book, too, because that was the one where Marco was alone, and he could tell that Jake and Cassie were saying it to each other, and then we were speculating, like, oh, probably he didn't notice this, but probably Rachel and Tobias, too, were having a conversation between them.
You know, so, I was thinking about Avatar: The Last Airbender the other day.
As you do, yeah.
As one does.
Right.
And I was thinking about when, I think Aang kissed Katara during the Eclipse invasion thing.
Yeah.
And then afterwards he was like, so we sort of kissed and I kind of thought we were going to be together forever, but we're not. And she was kind of like, there's just a bunch of other shit going on right now, so I'm not ready. So yeah. I kind of wonder I wonder how it went down with the Animorphs. If it went down like that, or I don't know.
Well, I think in this situation it would literally be like, well, he's a hawk. My girlfriend turned into the moon.
That's rough, buddy.
But yeah, in this situation, it's literally like he's a hawk, so nothing can ever come of that. Like,
so you think like they said, "Hi, by the way, I love you, and I'm only telling you this because we're about to die," and then they just never addressed it again because they know nothing can happen?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. And remember, too, I have knowledge of the future and kind of insight into like what Rachel, kind of her thought process. So it's not a spoiler per se, but I think that at this point, what I think she would be thinking is something like that. And, you know, Tobias is very much in the same line of thought. Like, even through, you know, he's always like, well, I'm a hawk, so, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting to see how things develop going forward.
Right? Wink. Okay.
Wink, nudge.
Okay, so bird date. It was great.
Bird date. It was great. He's going to show her the car wash where is another entrance to the York pool, and they were like, that's ingenious. But then they're by Cassie's farm, and Tobias is like, man, I zoned out. Like, that was bad. So he course corrects. They're going towards the car wash. Now he's going to show her. And then they're by Cassie's farm. And he's like, wait a minute. And Rachel goes, are you lost? And he's like, no.
No.
But he's also like, this isn't right, though. Like, I know where I'm going. And then they see a tree skate by like it's on a skateboard and a manhole cover open up in the middle of the forest and Hork-Bajir coming out of it.
As you do.
So, as you do. You know, those forest manholes, those are the most dangerous kind. Very normal. Yeah, for sure. So the Hork-Bajir come out of there and they are stunned at what they're seeing. And it's just a Hork-Bajir blinking in the sunlight, and then it's closely followed by another one. And as they're kind of standing out in the open, Tobias and Rachel don't really know what to think at first, and then the alarms start blaring, and the Hork-Bajir take off. Pretty soon after they leave, people come pouring out of this manhole, and they're like, no biggie, they'll never catch the Hork-Bajir. But then the dirt bikes come out.
God, it got very Mad Max.
Oh my god, it did. And like two people to a dirt bike so that one could shoot and one could drive.
Super. Just, I loved it. I love anything Mad Max. So I was just like picturing the fucking like war boys with the explosive spears just like screaming after them.
What a lovely day. Oh, that would be amazing. What if this whole division was thought up by, like, one Yeerk that was super into the Mad Max memories that his human had, and he's like, you guys, I have a great idea.
Or,
I mean, wrong
maybe
time.
George Miller read Animorphs and found this, like, this scene and was like, oh, I want that in my movie.
Oh, well, see, that... They have a dependence on a particular source of something that is hard to find.
Yep.
Oh my god. So
oh my god.
I believe what we just proved here is that Mad Max is an Animorphs fan movie.
Heck yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And super strong female leads.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. It's happening.
Oh god.
This is it.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And they drive trucks badly and sometimes crash them. It's proven. That's solid.
The similarities. It's too coincidental.
It is too coincidental. The similarities are endless. It is literally the same series.
Oh god, I love this.
Oh, so, okay. Well, that's going to have to be one of our side podcasts now, is the Mad Max cast.
Fuck yeah.
The Mad Cast?
I'll talk about that for the rest of my life. I love that movie. Anyway.
All right, perfect. You can walk me through the Mad Max movies. We'll switch roles.
Cool.
All right, got it. Look out for that podcast. Okay, so what is happening is Hork-Bajir are running. People are doing their Mad Max thing on the bikes and taking off after them. And Tobias and Rachel are kind of like, what do we do? Like, what's our responsibility in this situation? And it's Rachel, of course, that says, have you ever heard the saying that a friend of my enemy is like or an enemy of my enemy is my friend? And Tobias is like, well, I guess that means we're saving the Hork-Bajir. So they do. They go off after them, and they're trying to decide kind of how they're going to save them. So they originally start giving them directions in their heads, like, okay, we can see how this battle is playing out. We can see where the motorcycles are, and they're like, go left here. There's a large pile of rocks. Turn right at the rocks. And they realize very quickly the Hork-Bajir cannot figure this out. This is way too much shit to be throwing at them. They are a simple and kind species. Not good at directions. And then they're like, okay, we're going to have to, like, get intense here. And Tobias, just like in the most accipiter-like move of all time, dives into the forest and is dodging high speed through trees and saying, follow me. So they're running after him while he's like dodging left, right, up, down, around the trees, which is a very, very specialized skill that red-tailed hawks are not particularly good at. But no. Tobias, I'm willing to forgive this one because he has a human brain in there. So
a slight advantage.
A flight advantage. He rolled advantage on this particular maneuver. So, yeah. But I did write that he's accipitering as best he can. And accipiters are the hawks that are specialized into this, including the goshawk, Cooper's hawk, sharp-shinned hawk in our area. Anyways, there's other accipiters and birds that are adapted to this. Harpy eagles are another really cool one, although that's different.
Favorite.
Your babies.
My favorite babies.
Yeah. So, it's pretty cool. Tobias would not be very good at this, but, you know, whatever. We're going to let it go. So he's careening around. He's leading them through. And then he's like, we could go through a river, but I don't know if they can swim. And I didn't write down if it was Rachel or Tobias, but one of them goes, like, chop down the next sapling you see if you're able to swim. And it was apparently, like, instantaneous. Like, one of the Hork-Bajirs just, like, shrink and, like, chop down a sapling. So they're like, all right, we're good.
What if it was a coincidence? What if they just happened to chop down a sapling at this point?
Or what if they didn't know what, like, swimming was, and they were like, we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. Oh, God!
And they drown. Yeah, that was a potential thing that could have happened here, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. Anyways, they're going. And then they realize that the Yeerks have mobilized a helicopter and trucks as well, alongside these bikes. And so they peel off and do the only thing that Rachel and Tobias would ever agree to do. No other Animorph would agree to this. They're like, we're gonna fucking take down these guys with shotguns riding in the back of a truck as birds of prey.
Hooray! It's foolproof.
Yeah. It's foolproof. And so they go in and they fucking take out these guys with shotguns. They, like, got so close that when they fired off a blast, it missed by, like, an inch. And they knock them out of the back of a moving truck. like, they died. Those controllers died.
Wow.
For sure. Like,
yeah.
For sure. And then what happens is, as the truck is going forward, they knock the guys out. They're all like, yay, we did it. But then the Hork-Bajir cross paths with this moving truck, and the one in the lead jumps it, clears it. The other one gets totally nailed by the truck. And Tobias just goes, you gotta run. You gotta run. But then the Hork-Bajir turns around and goes, my wife.
My wife.
And it's shocking. I literally wrote down, my wife.
And everyone's like, what?
Yeah.
Wife?
And everybody's like, what, wife? You have a wedding structure on your planet? That was my thing. I was like, I mean, it was probably just the word that they had heard. It's probably not an actual descriptor of, like, the exact ceremonial things. But that was, I don't know. Why am I explaining this to you? They have live-in boyfriends as well on the Hork-Bajir planet. Oh, man. Anyways. So yeah, that's end of the chase scene right there. They cut it. The one Hork-Bajir is gone. The other one is looking for his wife. And they're like, well, fuck. They do get the one away that's looking for his wife.
Yes.
So, Rachel and Tobias call a meeting in the barn about what the fuck just happened. And this whole scene, this whole chapter, there's a lot of conversation that happens, as usual, when they're in the barn. They're throwing around ideas of what to do. They're talking about, like, you know, they're no Stephen Hawkings, and then, you know, Axe is explaining who Stephen Hawking is, blah, blah, blah. But what we need to take away from this is that Marco was freaking the fuck out the entire time.
Ugh.
His running commentary through this whole thing is Marco like, do they go goo-goo over babies? Do they put makeup on their wrist blades? Do they paint their disgusting toes?
Shut up, Marco.
Literally every stereotype until he gets to, no, guys, the real question here is, do they get all grossed out by bugs and snakes? And that is when Cassie literally takes a snake out of a drawer and throws it at Marco. And he gets the point.
It's probably not great for the snake to be thrown like that, but whatever.
I thought that too, but then I was like, no, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, okay. Snakes probably bounce. They're probably, you know, they're mostly flesh, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of bounce off the ground.
I'm sure it's fine. Well, I'm sure it hit Marco, and it kind of, like, wrapped a little bit and, like, kind of tumbled gently to the ground.
Okay. Cassie's not, like, whipping it.
I don't think she, like, grabbed it by its tail, like, gave it a couple loops.
Times.
And, like, super, like, whip snapped it really fast in his head.
Oh, God.
No, I got the impression...
There was no snakes were harmed in the making of this scene.
That's the disclaimer at the beginning of the book. Didn't you read that? Page 1.
Oh, yeah, of course.
No snakes were harmed in the making of this. I mean, mice were.
Yeah, lots of mice.
Lots of mice.
That bobcat didn't fare so well.
No, he did not. He did not. The raccoon got away unscathed. That was good.
Yeah, he's okay.
Yeah, the skunk got a hella respect.
Yeah. I think another bird got Drake and beamed, which isn't cool. But...
Yeah, an unnamed bird. Not the Swainson's hawk. So that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In any case.
Yeah, in any case, that was that whole chapter. And how it ends is they collectively decide to ask that they're going to go ask the Hork-Bajir what he wants to do, which was a really cool moment that kind of leads very nicely into this next chapter, which I'm about to go into a ton of detail about because I think it's so important as a message in this series and such a cool interaction as well. So they go out to meet the Hork-Bajir because they're going to ask him what he wants to do. And Axe and Tobias are kind of the ambassadors of their species to integrate the first free Hork-Bajir in who knows how many years. So they're going to go into the cave. They warn him, like, we're coming in. But as soon as he sees Axe, he slashes at him because all he knows is fighting the Andalites. That's all he knows. And there's some insane historical talk that's so cool about, like, how Axe is going, like, we want to help you. And he's going, no, you only kill us. And he's like, no, my people tried to help you. And the Hork-Bajir goes, you failed. And it was just like, holy shit. Yeah, but it's still incredible, this interaction. So after he slashes at Axe, they order him to come out of there. And they have Rachel and Cassie kind of flying over, and Jake and Marco in battle morphs just in case. But this really only is a verbal thing that happens. Mm-hmm. So they keep calling him the Hork-Bajir, and he goes, I'm not the Hork-Bajir. I'm Jerahami, which is Jeremy, apparently, is what Marco hears. Yeah, but Jerahami. And I'll keep pronouncing it like that so you guys don't think I'm saying Jeremy, even though I think... Jerahami. Yep. But he goes, he's talking about the Yeerks and talking about... And it's very simple, too. It's very, like, I'm not quoting directly. I'm kind of talking in my voice, not his voice. Because his sentences are very broken, and they're very focused on subject, and they're not really intelligent. But he starts talking about how the Andalites kill him, and they cut them, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, no, it's the Yeerks. We're after the Yeerks. We're not after you. And he says the Hork-Bajir are just caught in the middle of this. We don't want to, kill anyone. And then they ask him, how do we know you're not still infested? And he cuts his own fucking head open to show them his brain.
That's some saw shit.
That's so hardcore. Yeah, and the whole time they're like, he's in tremendous pain. Like,
oh my
everything
God.
is horrible, and it's disgusting.
God.
I know, right? And he has iridescent blood, which is another thing that's really cool.
Ooh, pretty.
He's so pretty while he shows them his own brain.
Look at this beautiful blood.
Yeah, and then he kind of pushes his head back together and holds it for a second, and the blood just immediately starts coagulating. And Tobias says to Axe, he asks him, did that scare the pee out of you, or are Andalites used to this sort of thing? And Axe replies, I am as peeless as you, Tobias, my friend.
I'm getting that tattooed on my body.
Oh my God, please.
That's
please.
The greatest quote of the Animorphs series so far. I am as peeless as you.
I need you to get that tattoo. I need it so badly.
Oh my God.
I've never needed anything more in my life.
Don't encourage me.
I need you to.
Oh no.
Oh, that's so good.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, so anyways, after Jerahemi says that he, or proves that he's not infested, he says that he is strong, but he needs help because he needs to get his wife, because he is, and then he doesn't have words for it, but he makes this gesture of something being broken inside of him, and they all get that he means heartbroken without her. And in that moment, that's when the Animorphs are like, okay, this guy's good. And my question for you is, what are your thoughts after this interaction? About Hork-Bajir.
The poor babies. Well, like, especially, as the book goes on and kind of talks about, like, what their blades are for and what their, natural kind of nature is. Nature.
I knew what you meant.
Oh, my God. That's just, like, I see them in a whole new light now.
Yeah.
Like, I feel so much sympathy for them. I mean, everybody kept saying, like, oh, they were a peaceful race that were enslaved by the Yeerks, but we never really see that until now. And the fact that they have, like, love for each other, I think I felt a little more sympathetic finding out that Hork-Bajir have husbands and wives, and they have, love for each other. It didn't feel the same way it did when I found out that the Yeerks could love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's sweet, and I definitely view the Hork-Bajir differently now.
Me too.
Just feel bad for them now.
Yeah, completely. They're totally being used, and I think there's a lot more to talk about there, like, as this goes on. And then also, once we get to later this year, we'll be getting to the Hork-Bajir Chronicles, and it's really, that series is a mind fuck. Or that book is a mind fuck for sure.
Mind fuck.
Yeah, it's so good though. But yeah, that was This is really, I love this interaction. And as the ambassador of his species as a Hork-Bajir, Jerahami is just incredible. Like, what a great character. And again, in this book, with the show me, don't tell me, this was a great moment.
Yeah, and I think the other thing about the Hork-Bajir that makes them more sympathetic is the fact that they aren't geniuses. They are so simple-minded.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Just because they're not, you know, at the same level of intelligence as, like, the Andalites or the Pemalites, they still have the emotions that make them very relatable.
Yeah. And the other part of that is, they have all the emotions and everything, but also they're never, the Animorphs never don't accept them, or, I mean, Marco kind of mocks them a little bit, and they all, I mean, I'm sure they all get a quip or two about how simple they are, but, like, Tobias just, they're, you know, by the end of it, they're friends. They're his friends, and he never, like, looks down on them for being simpler and slower than the human race or the Andalites, and it's probably almost a relief in some ways to, like, find out this is what the Hork-Bajir are actually like, because every other alien interaction they have is tense or miserable. It's Visor 3, or it's, like, the Andalite, the guys that are answering the phones, you know, the military. Like, it's just, those interactions are so intense, and this one was just, like, intense, but in a different way, and it turned out so wonderfully. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, those were that's, I guess, my feelings on this. But we'll move on. We'll move along to continue this. Right after that Jerahami kind of wins their trust, Cassie warns them that the company is incoming. And this company is Yeerks and Hork-Bajir, and they're hunting him down, which is terrible. So they're trying to figure out what to do and fast. And Tobias says, you know, if they're looking to chase a Hork-Bajir, then we can give them one. And this plan that he has come up with, he knows, like, this is a good plan, but it makes him sick because he's suggesting that one of the other Animorphs morph this Hork-Bajir and become the bait and run into the woods and distract them from Jerahami. So he just feels awful about this because he wants to be the one to do it. He doesn't want to put his friends in danger, but it's a good plan, and Rachel volunteers, which makes it worse for Tobias. Yeah. Ax does ask permission from Jerahami, and he immediately grants it because he basically just says the Yeerks are the worst. And so Rachel lands, they make him turn around so he can't see that she's a human, and she demorphs, and she's trying to reassure Tobias with, like, looks and, like, you know, it'll be okay, like, kind of things, that this is fine. But Tobias is just gutted. Like, he feels so bad. And when she finally does end up morphing the Hork-Bajir, they have, like, moments left. Unfortunately, Rachel and Jerahami do launch into a ritual that neither of them seems to be able to control.
Oh, God.
That includes bellowing and slashing at each other and, like, basically near misses. So, yeah. And these guys are not far away. They for sure heard this go down. So, yeah. Finally, Rachel kind of gets control. After they do the ritual, she kind of comes out of it and is like, oh, well, that, I don't know what happened. That was a little weird, but okay. And so she's like, all right, back to the plan. Let's run.
Fucking, you know how albatrosses do that little, like, mating courtship dance thing? Where they, like, scream and then they clack their beaks together really fast?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking about.
That's pretty close. I mean, they do touch horns and, like, scream at each other. So, that's pretty freaking close.
There you go.
I like the part where they stood up on their tippy toes to try to see who is taller.
It's so cute.
That is so cute. Yeah. But yeah, so once Rachel does get control, she's like, okay, let's do this. And Tobias is, of course, still feeling so awful that he decides he's going to land on Rachel's horns and ride her into battle.
The fuck?
this isn't the first time Rachel's been ridden into battle. It's just the last time was like Megamorphs 1. It was a while ago.
Yeah, when she was an elephant.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, she goes running, and she's going to distract everybody while they hide Jerahemi. And Cassie warns them that they're running into a trap because she's still up top watching while they're maneuvering through the forest. And so Rachel changes direction, heads the other way, but trips and kind of tumbles Tobias into some bushes. He's a little stuck, but she cuts him out of there. And when he kind of pops up out of the brush to, like, go and land on her horn again, he gets, like, completely pulled out of there. He misses her head entirely, and he's trying to, like, get back to the battle, but he is just slid way the fuck away. And he's like, oh my god, this crazy force is working on me again. And he gets pulled to another battle where the Animorphs are not. And in this other battle, it's Visor 3 demorphing from a human, and he and controllers and other Hork-Bajir are surrounding another Hork-Bajir. And this one, Visor 3 refers to as K.A Applegate. And this is the female Hork-Bajir, Jerahemi's wife.
The wife.
My wife. I'm sorry, that's not funny. I need to stop that. So Tobias doesn't know what to do. He feels really helpless. He's like, I can't sneak up on an Andalite. I don't know what to do. And then he goes, well, maybe there's one thing I can do. This is the Swainson's hawk territory, and I think I know where he roosts most of the time. So this is like a one-shot deal, and I have to get super duper lucky. And he does. He dives at the tree where the Swainson's hawk normally is roosting, and basically just rouses him out of there because Tobias is screaming and like saying, I'm gonna take over your territory, basically in hawk body language and sound. And so the Swainson's comes out to defend its territory, which it would probably run in real life. I don't think it really defend it too hard, but he comes out. This distracts Visor 3 enough that Tobias is able to kind of backtrack around and swoop in, and he says to K.A Applegate, get ready to bolt, and then rakes Visor 3, gets in a lucky shot, and they both take the fuck off.
Sorry, Lauren.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always forget. Yeah. My scars are that the minute that you say he's Visor 3, I completely forget he is a sad Andalite man person.
Sad Andalite man.
Sad Andalite and his
man
son.
And his son. Oh no.
I die every time I hear that description.
That's one of the funnier things I've said, I think.
I don't know. You get a lot of gems.
Cool.
Tobias gets away with K.A Applegate, and they do loop back to where the other Animorphs are. They've been through their battle, and they do still have Jerahemi, so they reunite the Hork-Bajir, and it's very sweet. Like, they can't hug because they're full of blades, but they hold hands, and they touch horns, and it's so sweet.
So cute.
Yeah, it is so cute. So they, shove them in a cave together to hang out, and Tobias is like, I'll guard them for the night, I have nothing else to do, and Axe is like, I mean, sure, me too. And then the kids are like, what the fuck do we do with these giant goblin monster aliens? So they talk about what to do, and it's Cassie that makes the connection, as always, that they're basically endangered species. These are the only free Hork-Bajir pretty much in the galaxy as far as we know. Mm-hmm. And so they gotta take them to a preserve, and Tobias immediately sees this place in his head that he's like, I know the exact place where they have to go. It'll be perfect. I know, we gotta do it. The only problem is he has never seen this place before or been there. So someone put this thought in his head, and that's not a good thing in Animorphs land. Nope. So Tobias, it cuts to Tobias in the tree outside of the cave. I mean, they're guarding them, but they're not really guarding them. They're just kind of hanging out in case, the simpletons bolt into the bushes and they need to be like, no, you can't do that, please, for the love of God.
Babysitting them.
You're babysitting them, yeah. It's the Hork-Bajir Babysitters Club. Oh my god, I'd read that series.
Oh my god, me too.
Holy shit.
Oh my god.
I would read that series so hard.
Jesus. So, Tobias is babysitting the Hork-Bajir.
Right. Tobias is babysitters clubbing the Hork-Bajir. So he's hanging out, and he's talking about how uneasy he is at night and how he rules the day because of his excellent vision, his excellent hearing, and that when it turns to night, that belongs to the owls. And then Axe comes along, and Tobias starts talking about how that comforts him because he at least has someone to talk to, because the other animals in the forest don't talk. And they're just talking about how they heard the Hork-Bajir talking earlier, and what does this word mean, and they're not really sure. And then Tobias goes, hey, Axe, does something ever pop in your head that, like, you didn't know before? And Axe goes, well, sometimes I remember things that I forgot. And he's like, no, not like that. Which, good job, Axe, I guess.
He tried.
He did his best.
He tried to relate.
He did try to relate. And there's another comment in here, too, about, like, Tobias making a joke, and he goes, it's funny because it's the opposite, and Axe goes, I understand, and Tobias goes, he didn't understand.
The narrator, he didn't understand.
Exactly. Yeah, so Axe is doing his best to relate to Tobias, and Tobias is like, no, not like that, and then he starts telling him about the valley, how he's like, I've never been there, but, like, I remembered it, and I know how to get there, and I knew we had to take him there. And then all of a sudden, he's like, there's Taxon hunting us down. And he gets a vision of Taxon crawling through the forest, like, sniffing them out. And Axe goes, well, how do you know that? Those are tracking Taxons. Those were genetically modified Taxon. And he's like, I can't tell you how I know that. I just know it. This is what I was talking about. Like, we got to get out of here. And they do. Tobias goes to lead the Hork-Bajir away, and Axe takes off to go find Jake. Yay! Hooray! So Tobias is leading the Hork-Bajir through the dark, and he was hoping they would see so that he could kind of guide them, but also, like, you know, they're not all tripping everywhere. But unfortunately, they can't really see in the dark, and Tobias, as he pointed out, could not really see in the dark either. So Jerahemi asks at one point where they're going after they stumble around for a while, and Tobias is really irritated, and he's like, I don't know, I guess the voice in my head will tell me where to go. And then Jera, like, tries to relate. He goes, there is a voice in my head. He told Jerahemi to run with Ket Helpek. And, like, he susses out eventually that they got free, like, the Yeerk went back into the pool to feed, and a voice in their head said to grab her and run. And so they did, and it kind of guided them out of the Yeerk pool. And which is what? Which
is interesting, because when I read it, I thought the Yeerk had told them to run. And I was like, oh, rebel Yeerks? But maybe that was me misreading that section.
Yeah, I think he said it was after the Yeerk dropped out of his ear.
Oh, okay.
I think so. I don't totally remember, but I believe it was meant to be like the Elemist in his head.
Damn it, Elemist. I knew it was you.
Yeah, it's always the Elemist. Yeah. So Tobias, after hearing this and putting two and two together, he's basically like, well, we're not going anywhere. And Jerahemi is like, well, what about the Taxon? And Tobias is like, fuck them.
And he crosses his wings in a pouting manner.
He does, and does a little shoulder like, humph. Yeah, pretty much. That's what he does. And sure enough, the Elemist is like, all right, the jig is up, and, like, transports him into, like, middle space where he's floating as a bird-human hybrid creature thing, which is cool, but, like, it's also pretty funny. And Tobias even says in the book, like, I don't think you're going to be able to picture this, but this is what it was.
And look at the cover of this book. That's what it looks like.
It's kind of like that, but all at the same time. Yeah, so he and the Elemist go back and forth a bit, with the Elemist saying, you know, I gave the humans a chance a while back, and I think, you know, you need to return the favor to the Hork-Bajir, basically. And he tells Tobias that he is the start of the possibility for something new. He could be the person that created this new thread. And Tobias is like, I do not want to be wined and dined right now. You're gonna fucking pay me if I agree to do this shit. And the Elemist agrees to pay him, and here we get our genie in the bottle cliche. So, Kaycie.
He negotiated a higher salary.
he basically negotiated a higher salary.
Damn
so,
it.
like, what did you think of this interaction? Like, did you know immediately upon reading this that it was going to be one of those, like, you need to be 100% clear with the genie what your actual wish is kind of a deal?
I didn't call that particular aspect at that moment, but there were a lot of points in this book where I don't know if I subconsciously remembered from when I read it, like 10 years ago, or if, like, just the hints that were being dropped were transparent enough that I was able to guess what was going to happen. So, like, I'll bring up later, like, what exactly I guessed, but in that moment I didn't, like, I kind of went like, oh shit, he wants to be human again? And then that just kind of spiraled into a bunch of questions of, like, well, they've been kind of bringing this up in past books. Like, does he want to be human, but his human life sucked, so does he want to be a hawk? But,
yeah.
But as far as, like, the details of how that all went down, like, later in the book, I think I guessed those pretty accurately.
Yeah. And so that brings up another point that I meant to ask you about that I don't think I wrote down. But so I was never sure if you remembered that Tobias does eventually get his morphing abilities back. Did you remember that? Like when we started out?
I don't know. I don't think I thought about it. Because really when I'm reading this book, I'm trying to just, like, take them at face value and apply that to what I've already read. So I'm not necessarily trying to guess what happens in the future all the time.
Yeah.
But as soon as, spoiler alert, as soon as he does get his morphing abilities back, like, then my brain kind of goes like, oh shit, he's a hawk, but he can morph. Will he get his human morph back? How does that happen? Oh my god, he's going to be a hawk, but he can be a human sometimes, and blah, 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 blah. So, like, I guessed that all that was going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And they don't try to, like, play that out either. They're like, by the end of this book, they're like, we have set the rules down, and these are the new rules now.
Oh, he's like Cinderella.
Yeah.
Aw. He has till the stroke of midnight before he turns back into a hawk.
Aw.
Baby.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I was just curious because I was really excited to read this book. So I'm like, oh, you're gonna be, like, totally shocked that he gets his morphing abilities back when we read this book. But then, like, when we started reading it, I'm like, she has read these books before, like, some of them. And I'm like, and I feel like that's a point that you would remember. Like, it just seems to me like, I was like, you probably know.
So I didn't remember that, but again, enough kind of hints were dropped. Like, as soon as I knew that the Elemist was involved and then Tobias started negotiating, I'm like, okay, I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I brought it up now, because I think, I think now we can guess where this is going.
Yes.
But it does not happen yet, so forget you just heard all that. Yes. For now, for another 10 to 15 minutes, let's just retcon that. But yeah, so they're all stumbling through the forest of night, blah, blah, blah. He meets the Elemist, and the Elemist just basically says, like, all right, I'll pay you. And then, like, plops him right back with the Hork-Bajir. And it's basically like, if you complete this mission, I will pay you. Which, I mean, that's how transactions work. So, fair? Yeah. But yeah. So he stumbles through the forest all night with the Hork-Bajir, all night in the dark, and when morning comes, the Hork-Bajir are exhausted, and Tobias is exhausted and hungry. And so the minute it starts to get light out, Tobias goes, do you guys want to take a break and eat? And the Hork-Bajir are like, oh, thank God. And they basically stumble to the nearest tree and just start stripping the bark and eating it. And they offer Tobias some because they're polite as fuck. And they're
polite as fuck.
They're so polite. So I offer him some, and he's like, no, I don't really eat bark. And they say, well, it's not as good as, like, the trees at home. And then they're like, oh, but this is good bark. Like,
oh my God.
I know.
Babies.
They're so wonderful.
They're so sweet.
They are. They're like, they're afraid that they affronted him about their bark choices.
Oh my God.
Like, I've said more offensive things, like 100 more offensive things in the past 5 minutes. Like, they're so wonderful. All right, so they are eating the bark, and Tobias watches them eat the bark for a minute, and then he has the realization, like, oh my god, those blades aren't weapons, those are for harvesting bark. And he was like, holy shit, like, these people are so peaceful, those aren't even for predators. And he asked them, he's like, you don't use those to defend yourself? And they're like, no, we don't fight, we don't defend ourselves, like, we don't have to defend ourselves, there's nothing that we have to fight against. They're like, we just use it for eating barks. They're like, our wrist blades are for this type of bark, and our elbow blades are for, like, making notches, and our shin blades are for, like, the bottom of the trees. And he's like, holy crap, this, like, these people are the peacefulestest.
They're the sweetest,
they are
purest
the sweetest
babies.
They are so pure. The purest species.
They're cinnamon rolls.
Aww. Oh, but then Axe would love them.
Oh, right. Axe would consume them.
Axe would eat
Body
them.
and soul.
He would. Oh, so, anyways, after Tobias watches them eat, he's like, I'm gonna go find something to eat too, because I'm starving. So, he goes out hunting, and he's totally caught up in his own head about, like, well, what's it gonna be like when I get my human body back? And I wonder if I'll get my morphing powers back. And, oh, I hope I get my morphing powers back, because I still want to fly. So, like, he's still, like, you know, obviously kind of wants to be a hawk. But, yeah, he's debating all this in his head, and is really distracted, which is always helpful when you're hunting.
Right.
And, yeah, it's actually really not. He goes to drop on a rat, but he hits an air pocket and gets kind of tumbled away. So he lands on the ground next to some brush and bam, gets batted away by a bobcat. So he's now in a life and death, like, standoff with a bobcat, which, you know, that sucks. He's gonna lose for sure. But he has his human brain. So the hawk keeps trying to fly away, and he's like, nope, nope, nope. He grabs a stick in his talons, and when the bobcat finally does lunge towards him, he just brings up the stick and pokes him right in the eye.
Aw.
I know. And Tobias takes his opportunity, kind of flaps off. The bobcat is hot on his trail when, bam, a Taxon slams down on top of the bobcat and eats him in one weird-ass bite.
Aww.
Yeah.
This never would have happened to Fluffer McKitty.
No, Fluffer McKitty would have fucking murdered all the Taxons.
All of them, not just that one.
No, all of them. Every
All
single
of
one.
Fluffer McKitty, the hero.
The dark hero.
The dark hero.
Fluffer McKitty is not the hero that we need, but he is the hero that we deserve.
Oh my god.
So Tobias is winging his way away from this whole scene. He's hungry now. He has almost been eaten by a bobcat. Everything is terrible for Tobias right now. Kind of the whole book, actually. But he sees a peregrine, and he's kind of like his normal, like, bird mode of, it shouldn't bother me, but also I need to be careful because he might bother me. And then luckily it turns out that that's Jake. And sure enough, he starts looking around, and he starts seeing the other birds coming up, like, you know, converging from the distance. Mm-hmm. And Cassie says, hey, Tobias, we were talking and we were thinking that there, like, might be a bigger force at work here because of the whole thing. And Tobias just goes, he's like, if it was anybody else, I'd go, like, no, duh. But because it's Cassie, he just goes, yeah, it's our friend the Yellow Mist. And and that was it. Like, there really wasn't anything like, oh, this is a great revelation. They were kind of like, oh, yeah, that motherfucker, whatever, okay. So they drop in on the Hork-Bajir, and they have the argument, do we reveal ourselves as human to these Hork-Bajir? And they have this amazing moment where Tobias goes to the Hork-Bajir and he goes, what would you guys do if you were to be recaptured? And both Jerahemi and Ket Helpak, they gesture emphatically that they would literally split their own heads and kill themselves before they would be recaptured. And then they start screaming, free or dead. And I think it's Rachel that's the one that immediately takes up this cry, and the rest of the Animorphs kind of follow suit. And Tobias half-heartedly, Marco very, very half-heartedly, I'd say quarter-heartedly. Like, he's not into it, but they're all, like, chanting, free or dead, which is amazing. And then Rachel starts, like, she had demorphed at this point, and the Hork-Bajir were very surprised, and they think they were laughing because it was so unexpected that these were humans and not Andalites. And then they're all chanting, "Free or dead." And Tobias tries to explain to Jerahemi that he is a hawk that can't change, and Jerahemi does not get it. He's like, "Yeah, I was a controller, but now I'm not, so I can change." And Tobias is like, "Oh, okay, he's just not getting it. Whatever. It's fine." So, this whole scene happens, and of course they're chanting "Free or dead," but, like, you know, the Yeerks are hot on their tails, and so they take off. And they're parading through the forest as humans and Hork-Bajir, and Axe is kind of running up front and clearing the path and making sure nothing's coming ahead. Marco is complaining, and Tobias kind of hears a little bit of the conversation as he's doing the aerial surveying to make sure nothing's coming up from behind and nothing's going to surprise them. And Marco's kind of like, "Why are we walking? My legs hurt. Everything's horrible." And Cassie's like, "But we're out in nature, so everything's wonderful. We're breathing fresh air and enjoying ourselves." And
oh god, that sounds like when Matt and I go on a hike. I'm Marco. I'm like, "Oh god, why did I agree to this?"
And he's Cassie.
And he's like, "But we're out in nature, yay!" And then he pushes me up the hill, and I die probably.
That's pretty much exactly what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, "Why can't the Elements just transport us to the final destination?
Why can't we just take the Eagles to Mount Doom?" Sorry. Oh no.
I mean, they could fly right there. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, sorry. I'm recovered. Okay, so they're parading around the forest like idiots, and Tobias is like, he's like, "Oh, these guys seem to be doing okay," and he sees an opportunity to grab a mouse, and he goes for it, and he gets it. He's like, "It was the perfect hit. It was wonderful." This is the part where he says, like, you know, "A job well done, even if it's catching mice is you know, good." But as he's eating, he starts, like, he's satisfied, whatever, he's done eating, he gets airborne again, and he realizes there's helicopters coming out of nowhere. So he starts flying back as fast as he possibly can. He's using every trick he knows to try and gain speed and altitude and make it back there. But, you know, it's helicopters. It's going to outrun a hawk. And he's, like, screaming at them, like, you know, "This is coming, blah, blah, blah." And he gets too close to the copters, and the backwash tumbles him down towards the ground, and he slams into a branch, and he breaks a wing and tumbles completely to the ground. And that's where he sees his doom, which is a raccoon. Yeah. Raccoons. That's how it's going to end for Tobias. The forest is not his friend. Actually, this is really interesting. Sorry, this just occurred to me, so this might be nothing, but let's try it. When he's thinking about being human, and he's thinking that he's not going to be a hawk anymore, he totally lets his instincts go, and the forest starts kicking his ass.
Interesting.
This is like the inverse of the last book, where he, like, had to let himself go as a human to become a hawk. Well, it's the same. He had to let himself go as a human to become the hawk, to be able to survive in this environment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, this whole book has been very much like him trying to balance the hawk versus the human. He has to use the human part of his brain to get out of certain situations, but if he stays too long on the human side, then he fucks up. Yeah.
Which is the exact warning that the Elemist gave him.
Right.
That's interesting. Like, I don't know why that... It's the same conversation we had in book 3, but it's a totally different meaning on the same conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, well... Anyways, a raccoon is gonna kill him and eat him. So he's being dragged away to his death by his broken wing, and the raccoon is going to run him under icy water. And he mentions a really cool fact, which I did not look up, but, like, it sounds like, obviously, K.A Applegate's very good at doing her research and will retcon things that are wrong and has a lot of factoids. So I hope this is true. Have not looked it up, so no guarantees, audience. But apparently the reason that they run things under the water is not to clean them so much. It's because it helps their sensitive hands feel things. So it's easier to, like, feel out when they're sussing apart an animal or something like that.
Hooray!
Hooray! So that's interesting. I don't know. Seemed really cool. So, yeah. So he's dragging him away to the icy water, and Tobias knows exactly why he's going to do that and is, of course, very concerned. And as he gets in the water, the Ellimist kind of chimes in at that point and says, "Would you like your reward now?" And Tobias goes, "Yeah, now would be a good time." So the Ellimist is like, "Okay, it's done." And Tobias goes, "Nothing was done." I know, it is done. And a nod. He crosses his arm, "It is done." Nod. And you hear it, ting. Yeah, so Tobias rages, though, because nothing was done. He's a hawk in the water. The raccoon still has him. Absolutely nothing was changed. And the Ellimist goes, "The Andalite gave you the power to morph. Use it." And that's when the terrible realization dawns on him that he won't be human. He has his morphing powers back, but he's not going to be a human. And at this point, he rages, calls him a liar and a cheat, but then he's about to be eaten by a raccoon, so he turns his attention back. He acquires the raccoon, starts morphing into it, and the raccoon's basically just like, "This was more than I signed up for," and takes off.
I am no longer interested. I will see myself out now. Thank you.
Exactly.
Classy as fuck.
Yeah. It's not a dumb raccoon. This is a smart raccoon here. He takes off in the raccoon morph now because, the original raccoon has seen himself out of the building. And Tobias is like, "I gotta get to my friends." He takes off running, and he just keeps going like, "This is not fast enough. This is not fast enough." And he's like fighting the urge to like take off. He goes, "I need altitude." And he's like, "But I'm a raccoon, but I need altitude." And that's, you can tell here how inexperienced he is with morphing because he finally remembers, "Oh yeah, DNA doesn't track injury, so I can morph back to myself and I'll be totally fine." And it's like, this is something that by book 13 and the 15 books we've gone through so far total, all of the other Animorphs have down pat. They know this. Sure. So yeah. It was just, it was funny. It was almost like nostalgia within a nostalgic book.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, Tobias does morph back to himself and takes off and wings it towards his friends. And as he gets airborne and gets above the canopy, he sees that all of these helicopters are moving against him, all the people on the ground, and they're setting a trap by starting a forest fire coming in one direction. And he sees that's when he sees the hawk come out of the trees, and they Drake and beam him down and kill him. So he is kind of like looking for his friends, trying to like stay out of the way, and he sees Axe first, and he says to Axe like, "Hey, is everything going fine?" Axe is apparently totally nonchalant about everything going on right now. And he says, "Yeah, they're all here." And so he goes, "Okay, nobody morph anything that like flies because they're just zapping animals that come up above the treetops, so don't do that." And everyone's already in battle morphs. Rachel approaches him as a grizzly bear, and Tobias just like at this point like throws his proverbial bird hands in the air and is like, "I hope you're Rachel, because if you're a fucking bear, I've had a really bad day."
He's so mad in this book.
He is so mad. He's
fed the fuck up.
He is. And like, I mean, I'm sure that it's extra concentrated right now because of what just happened with the Ellimist, but yeah, it's pretty intense. He's pretty pissed.
Also, I'm pretty sure he's hangry.
Oh, right? Yeah. He is. I mean, he had that mouse a little while ago, but, right. He doesn't have any morphing stamina right now. So remember, like, one morph was a big deal back in the day, and he's just done, his one morph.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Yeah, he's probably hangry. He's been almost eaten by a bobcat and a raccoon. And the Ellimist didn't give him what he promised, and now there's a bear approaching him, and also nobody can fly because the Yerks are closing in on them and setting a forest fire, so they're also going to burn down his home, so we can have like a Free Willy 2 moment where they contain the oil spill. I hope you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so they contain the oil spill, and like, the girl Nadine was like, "But you don't understand. It's not going to be okay. Nothing's okay. This oil, this is my home. You get to go away, but like the otters and the birds, mm-hmm. But unfortunately in this scenario, it's not solved by ripping a pocket off of your shirt and handing it to her. Because nothing is always that simple. Jesse.
Jesse. So this is kind of the second book in a while where Tobias has had kind of a first hand in the action.
Yeah.
And I feel like he gets really stressed out and really kind of snippy.
Yeah.
When he's stressed out. Because, like, in Jake's book, the most recent Jake's book, when he was in the action, he was just, like, snapping at everybody, and he was, like, not handling his emotions well. And we're kind of seeing that again in this book. Which, you know, like, I'm not condemning that. Like, I understand. No, yeah. I would probably be the same way. But I just feel like he has his way of handling stress, and it's very different from the others. I don't know.
I agree with that for sure. But I don't know that it's like, it's similar to, he's kind of like a step towards like what Rachel is like, where she gets really enraged, but he's the step before that where she gets mad, but then he doesn't like turn it into like a full blown, okay, but now I'm gonna
go over the edge.
Right, exactly. He kind of like holds himself back, like, okay, but I'm not like that intense about it.
Right.
He's like us in the way that he'll just bitch about it to like other people, but then he won't actually like do anything about it.
Sure. That's fair.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that statement. He gets very snippy and very stressed, and I don't think it ever changes. Like, that's kind of him in that scenario.
Yeah.
And it's a very fallible human trait.
Yeah. And maybe I'm just pointing it out because we haven't seen it before recently.
Right. It adds something to their missions where I think before we were seeing like a very... We talked a lot about how it's a cohesive team and how they work well together, and Jake really knows how to handle them. And Tobias is really the outlier that, like... I mean, Marco jokes and Marco complains, but you always know it's, like, covering up how he's nervous. Whereas Tobias never covers it up. He's like, no, fuck this. I hate this. This is the worst. Like, he's just very open, whereas the others aren't. I think this goes back even to, like, arguing that Tobias is almost more of an emotional center than Cassie is, because Cassie will sometimes use that emotional intelligence to manipulate to get what she wants, whereas Tobias is just emotional overall. And, like, even earlier in the book, he said to Rachel, like, in the first couple pages when they were flying together, like, it really matters to me what you think of me. And then he goes, oh shit, that was too open. That was too much. Like, even he knows he's not overly emotional, but very open about his emotions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I just, like, mansplained to you.
No.
Something you already told me.
This is our podcast. We mansplain Animorphs.
That's true. We did say that we did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right. Is what I should have said and then not explained any further.
Nope.
Yeah. But, anyway, so they're Rachel comes up on him, and Tobias basically says, like, here's what I saw. They're starting a fire this way. There's enemies moving that way. But I have kind of a plan. As they're talking, they're like saying, well, they're not going to stop until like these Hork-Bajir are dead. And Tobias goes, well, okay, I have a plan. If they're not going to stop till these Hork-Bajir are dead, then let's give them 2 Hork-Bajir. And Rachel's like, oh yeah, like I already have the morph. And Jake goes, okay, I'll morph the other one. And Tobias just goes, no, I'll do it. And everybody is silent for like 30 seconds staring at him. And there's a couple precursory questions from, I believe, Cassie and Rachel, like, wait, no, you can morph. Yeah. You're not a human. No. And they're, like, varying levels of shocked and outraged. And Tobias is like, but there's no time for this. Like, let's do this. And I wrote, Tobias is a full-fledged member of the team, pun intended. But, but he's not a human.
Right.
And so I was interested in what were your particular feelings on this Elemist action when you were reading it? Like, were you outraged as well? Or were you kind of like, well, you have your morphing powers back, buddy. Like, that's cool.
I would say ask me again at the end.
Okay.
Because I have thoughts that tie into other thoughts.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was curious to, like, I was asking because I'm curious to know, like, as before technically you would know, like, he got his human body back, but still we'll keep going. Okay. So Tobias acquires the Hork-Bajir. And we get a very intense description of what it's like to morph them, especially because Tobias is, again, not used to morphing, so this is, like, a totally new thing. And Rachel actually takes a moment before they charge off into their battle and distraction plans and whatever to say, like, hey, are you okay? And Tobias snaps, like, I'm fine, just go, kind of a thing. And I to your point, he's snappy. He is very snappy, and it was just a dynamic that I appreciated because the ways that Rachel and Tobias interact are different than how Rachel acts with any other Animorph. So I pointed out because I'm obsessed.
Well, and going back to how Tobias reacts to things, like, we've seen him react to, you know, difficult things with kind of a dry humor. Mm-hmm. You know, like at the beginning when he found out that Rachel was nominated for this thing and he couldn't come, he was just like, oh, hey, you know, I saw you were with this thing, you know, like, that's cool, like, I don't mind that you didn't invite me, but, like, just, you know, don't feel sorry for me. And, you know, he'll kind of play it off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then in situations like this, he's just, like, completely, like, fuck off.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's very multifaceted, and it's interesting.
Oh, yeah. And it's so, like, just to add to your point, like, it is so interesting because, like, it's so human, and it's so real. He's not an idealized character. This is a huge flaw. Like, yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so believable.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, just to continue on to this point, because the next scene, like, plays into this as well, the Taxon are approaching, Rachel and Tobias are about to take off, and Jake's playing Tobias's role of being the lookout overhead and kind of directing where they go, which is really interesting because that's very much how a general would do it, or somebody, like, in charge of a military team would do it. And it's kind of weird to think that up until this point, that was always Tobias's job. And that he was feeding Jake the information and passing it along, but this is Jake's first time playing the major general, kind of.
Yeah, and he's actually struggling with it a little bit.
Yeah, he is. He's not as good as it. He's not as good at it. He can't put together the full picture as well as Tobias can.
Right.
Which goes back to, like, him having to decide with his gut instead of his brain. Mm-hmm. Like book 11. So yeah, so it's very interesting. It's an interesting dynamic, and Tobias even sasses him right away, saying, like, oh, it's easy for you to say when you're all safe up there. And it's like, you berated yourself for this for so long. Why are you doing it to Jake?
Yeah, and I'm also like, you wanted to be the Hork-Bajir.
Yeah, you really wanted to be the Hork-Bajir.
You volunteered for this. Like, why are you bitching?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, so they're gonna go, and the Taxon are approaching. Jake warns them, hey, the Taxon are on your tail, basically. The rocks ahead, they're on your left, and they're like, we can't see any rocks, and he's kind of like, oh, well, I guess to you it would be like vines or something, and they're like, okay. And the minute that Tobias lays eyes on the Taxon, he's like, let's destroy them. How dare they come into this forest? How dare they do this? And Rachel, like, grabs him and talks him down and says, this isn't the plan. And Tobias goes, like, screw the plan. We don't need a plan. And Rachel's like, no, dude, we need a plan. And then she goes, your anger at the Ellimist can't be directed to this. And that kind of cuts through the black rage that Tobias has. And he's like, oh shit, she's right. Like, I'm mad at the Ellimist. I'm not mad at this. Which...
This is so interesting. This is not something I would have expected from Rachel. I was fully expecting her to be like, yeah, you know what? Fuck the plan. Let's go fuck those guys up.
Yeah, me too.
Oh my god. Like, the fact that she did that, I was just like, whoa. Rachel?
Yeah.
Is that you?
And the other side of this is that she's never in the other books been super in tune with Tobias's emotions. Like, when he kept asking her to, like, please stop, like, showing up in the middle of the night and, like, scaring the shit out of me, she's like, I don't give a fuck what you need. And, like, you know, Rachel, don't go to the gardens alone. Fuck that. Like, you know, she's in tune. She cares. She wants to know. She cares for him. But she's never had that, like, intuition that she did in this moment with him.
Yeah.
So it was a super interesting reaction. And, like, yeah, I mean, even though I've read this before, I was like, whoa, she didn't go into battle. And, like, I know she didn't, but every time I read it, I'm still like, damn. So it's super interesting. But that minor delay did cost them a lot. Like, Rachel bringing him out of that cost them time that they didn't have, because the Taxon didn't attack them because they could cut them to ribbons and never think twice about it. But the Hork-Bajir warriors are on their tail now. They're alerted, and they're after them. And so Rachel and Tobias take off full speed to try and escape them, but they have to cut their way through the forest, and it's slowing them down just enough that the Hork-Bajir warriors are catching up to them. And it's just very weird, because they're like, Jake, what do we do? And he's like, they're gonna catch up to you. And Tobias is like, find an angle, go along the angle, find a ravine, find a gully. Like, Tobias is still directing how to escape through Jake. And he says, okay, like, there's a gully. What's the difference between a gully and a ravine? I don't know. And he's like, just find a fucking ditch somewhere. And Jake's like, okay, a ditch, I got that. And so he does.
I loved this whole scene. The fact that Jake, who is, understandably struggling with this because he hasn't really done it a lot before, but the fact that he was, like, struggling and second-guessing himself, and Tobias is just like, shut up, stay calm, do this thing. Yeah.
It really, like, maybe it does show how good the team is, because, like, it's such a niche role. Like, Tobias played that role so well. Yeah. That he had to, for himself, get into the battle to rectify his own, like, how bad he felt about sending Rachel in earlier. He had to become the Hork-Bajir to do this with her for himself, but he really needs to be Ariel. He really needs to play that role. Otherwise, they're weak. Strength. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was, and I loved the scene too, because on top of all of this and all of this interaction, the next part of it is so cinematic. Like, this is like a Western train robbery level of epic. So what ends up happening next is Jake gets them to a ravine or gully, ditch, whatever, and they tumble in there, and the Hork-Bajir that are trailing them do run right past, because they kind of jumped off the side of the trail. That old trick. The Hork-Bajir go past, so they are coming up behind them now, and Jake's going like, okay, you've got a fire coming in on one side, enemies in front, you're gonna have to fight your way out of this. And so they come up behind the Hork-Bajir warriors and are trying to get through to the edge of the ravine to jump, like, that way. And I have to retcon that a little bit, because that's kind of a spoiler. But yeah, so they go up, they're coming up behind the Hork-Bajir warriors, and they're getting into this battle where they're slashing and dodging, but they're also taking a ton of damage. Like, Tobias's leg gets, like, severed. Like, whatever keeps it moving gets severed. And they're going so fast that, like, human eyes can't see it. They're trading blows in seconds, and Tobias gets overwhelmed. And Jake steals Tobias's signature move and pulls a dive and slashes some eyes out. Hell yeah. This was epic. And it's extra epic because it's a peregrine falcon doing it. Like, that's just gotta hurt. So that he comes, does the signature move that gives Tobias just enough time to kind of get out of dodge and start running. And even with his bum leg, he's able to use his stump tail to hobble along. But Rachel, of course, pulls ahead because she's got two working legs, and Rachel goes running towards the edge of this ravine, and she just jumps off the edge of the cliff, like, into space, and is gone. And Tobias's hearts, because Hork-Bajir have more than one hearts, they're in his throat as he approaches this ledge, and there's fire on one side, there's enemies behind him, and there's smoke all over here, like, smoke so thick that Tobias is kind of losing sight of Rachel as she's running. And then Jake goes, oh no, I didn't see him in the smoke, and Visor 3 comes out of the thick cloud, blocking the edge of the ravine that he was about to run off. And he and Visor 3 are kind of looking at each other, and he knows he can't take him in a battle, and then Tobias makes this crazy split second decision and starts running at Visor 3, screaming, "Ket Helpek, free!" And Visor 3 knows he can kill Tobias and is feeling cocky, but then realizes that Tobias isn't running towards him to kill him. He's running towards him to knock him off the edge of the cliff with him. So Tobias is hurtling towards him, about to take him, off the edge of the cliff, and Visor 3 just steps aside, and that's fine. Tobias just keeps going. And as he's falling, an arm reaches out and grabs him and pulls him underneath the edge of the cliff. And it's Marco's arm is Big Jim.
Big Jim.
Big Jim. And it turns out Tobias only fell a few feet before he was grabbed. They're in a little kind of cave that's right under the edge of where the ravine ends, which is awesome and very convenient.
Yeah, I was like, that was lucky. He knew where to jump.
It was super well, I imagine Jake was leading them too.
Yeah.
But yeah, a couple feet to either side, too far out, you get too much clearance. Yeah.
Yeah, that could have been bad.
It could have been really bad. And as far as the Yeerks knew, it was really bad, because when they looked over the edge, at the bottom of the ravine were 2 Hork-Bajir bodies being attacked and eaten by wolves. Which was convenient.
Yeah, so, were they just kind of, hiding down there, and then when Rachel jumped off and got caught, Jera ran out there and, pretended to be dead,
yeah.
And then okay.
Yeah, that was the plan.
They orchestrated it.
Yeah, they totally orchestrated it. It was another one of those moments where, one of the Animorphs was like, I have a plan, and they're like, we don't tell you, the reader, the plan, and then here's the plan. Yeah.
Yep. Because it would be redundant.
Yeah, exactly. And boring to hear it just described instead of just to act through it.
Yep.
But yeah, and they're actually, apparently tearing at the Hork-Bajir in the bottom of the canyon, and they're like, they'll heal fast.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ow.
Good acting.
Yeah.
So, Visor 3 monologues.
He does.
He does.
He can't resist a good monologue.
He really can't. He's such a good villain. I didn't write down any of his monologue. I just said cue monologue, and then my next note is after Visor 3 had finished his monologue.
Basically.
Basically, blah, blah, blah. This is what happens when you think you can be free. You end up dying like those idiots, and the wolves will have their dinner. The end. Yeah. So once the Yeerks moved off, they all crawl out of their hiding places or get up from where they're pretending to be dead, and they reconvene on this little edge of the cliff. And they continue their journey to find the Valley of the Hork-Bajir.
The Great Valley!
The Great Valley! Oh no. So they're going on their journey to the valley to find the Great Valley. And Tobias was able to lead them there. He knew where it was from the memories that the Ellimist had planted in his head, and it truly was something of an Eden. The whole team is in awe. It's just this amazing place with, beaches and lakes and all these environments and all the bark that the Hork-Bajir could want to eat. And the Hork-Bajir then say this is the perfect place to have their children. And they're once again in awe of the idea that the first free Hork-Bajir are going to be born into freedom because of what they just did. And this is a reality now, that these kids are going to be born.
Aww.
Yeah.
The baby Jesus. Sorry.
Oh, how that gets so much more accurate as we go.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so after a short stay there, everyone leaves. Tobias was the last one that kind of hung out, and he was exploring, some caves around there and saying, this is where you can hide if anybody ever comes here, and make sure you don't leave, and all that sort of stuff. But finally he does leave, and he gets back to his meadow, and he was just relieved to be back there, which I think says a lot about his quick arc from the Ellimist not giving him his human body to him going back to his meadow as a hawk and being happy. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he spends the next day completely avoiding everybody and everything and just thinking, and he's going about his usual routine of scouting and hunting, and he was just contemplating his old life and how he's like, oh, well, what would I do if I was a human? Go back to my aunt and uncle who hate me and don't know my name and would just switch me around, and what did the Ellimist really take away from me, if anything? And after he finally kind of settles in for the night and goes to sleep, he's roused to a weird sight. And it is him as a hawk in his old bedroom with him in it. And he checks his Star Trek calendar because he has one of those. And he sees it's the day before they met Elfangor in the construction site. And his old self wakes up and he goes, this is just a dream. But he kind of knows why he's there. And Tobias the Hawk advises himself to walk home with Jake through the construction site the next day. And then he acquires himself. He says, oh, it's fine, hold out your arm kind of a thing. He perches on there and acquires his DNA. And then gets out of there. And the Ellimist issues him a warning. The 2-hour time limit still applies. And basically this is still a morph. This is not you. This is a morph. So if you stay here for more than 2 hours, you'll be stuck as a human and you won't be able to morph. Yeah. And then the Ellimist asks him 2 questions. He goes, have I kept my promise? And Tobias replies, yes. And then he asks, are you happy, Tobias? And there's no answer. The chapter ends. Yeah. But that's not where the book ends. That's just where the chapter ends. The final chapter is Tobias morphs to his human morph, and he sneaks into the school to watch Rachel win her award. He showed up late, but he had to because he couldn't approach the 2-hour time limit. And
what fucking ceremony takes 2 hours?
Oh my god, graduation.
Yeah, but this is like not whatever.
I know. It's probably just a really long ceremony.
They had to go through all the grades.
They're like, we gave a half day for this. We're going to use our 4 goddamn hours.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But yeah, Tobias sneaks in. A teacher notices him there, but she gives him a look like she knows him but doesn't really know where she can place him from. And finally, Rachel is the last one to leave and to get her award. And as she's walking out, she sees Cassie, and Cassie gives her a wink. She passes Marco, and Marco kind of gives her like a bow, and she laughs, and he also is cracking up. And then she sees Tobias and is walking, and then kind of does a double take and looks again, and he says, "Hi, Rachel." And that's the end of the book. So, my final question to you before we get into everything else is, do you think he's happy?
Honestly, again, when I was talking before about the fact that he became okay with being a hawk, and he fully acknowledges, like, the things that were shitty about human life, but also the things he really liked about human life. And I kind of feel like this, I mean, it's not the ideal compromise, but it's still a good compromise that he can be a human sometimes.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how that's going to play out in the future, if he's going to be like, oh shit, I really miss being human, I really want to be human all the time, but I can't, and I'm going to have angst over this. Like, I don't know. But I feel like for now, that's a good situation.
Yeah.
Like, much better off than he was.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And even if he didn't have his human morph, like the fact that he got his morphing powers back, it's just so integral to
yeah,
what the team is and what's going to happen. Like, it's basically like a whole, how many of them is, there was 5 when they started, so 20% of the team, of course, then they got Axe, so it's what, like, you know, a huge percentage of the team being unable to morph and unable to participate in a lot of things was really detrimental. But that being said, he also is the best scout and the best aerial support that they could ask for. Yeah.
So that makes me wonder if he's going to kind of remain the scout, or if he's going to try and do a variety of other things, and if they're going to have to, you know, train him a little bit. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as far as this team goes, I mean, they're probably going to do all of that. They're probably going to try different things and see what works and what sticks and what doesn't, just because that's their style.
Yeah.
They screw up until they find something that works, and then they improve upon it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we'll see. And it probably depends, too, on what the mission is. Because, I mean, there's some where having a hawk, as good as it is to have the aerial support, and they'll probably, fall back into old roles sometime. Their old roles, because you do, as a human. That's a human trait. But on missions where having a hawk is not at all beneficial or even possible, I mean,
it's like in hockey, like there's gonna be situations where they're gonna need 6 battle morphs instead of 5. And so it's like when you pull the goalie.
Oh no!
Sorry, that's a really weird analogy, but yeah, the tides are gonna turn now that Tobias can morph again. Yay! I'm so proud of him.
I'm proud of him too, and. Next book is the very first book that I ever read of Animorphs. So,
the Cassie one?
The Cassie one. So I'm super excited for it. It is it's nostalgia at its finest. I probably won't flip out as much as I did with the reaction, because that's quintessential Animorphs for me. But
sure.
But it was my first introduction to Animorphs, and it is chock-a-block full of 90s references that will blow your mind and make you laugh, and also the most immature humor of any of the Animorphs books.
Oh, speaking of that, this book was really hilarious. Like, there was some really good banter in this book.
Especially with Axe. Marco had some good ones too, but Axe really was killer in this book.
There's one exchange that I loved, which was Tobias and Axe when they were talking. I think they were talking outside the Hork-Bajir cave. Mm-hmm. Or Tobias said something like, "Yeah, and eagles may fly out of my butt." And Axe goes, "Is that possible?"
He looks super concerned. Yeah, that's the one where the next part of that exchange is where he's like, "No, it's funny because it's so impossible." And Axe goes, "I understand." And he goes, "X did not understand."
I fucking love that exchange. It was so funny. There's a couple of points in my notes where I say this book is hilarious.
Yeah. Oh my god. And this one wasn't meant to be funny, but the part of the book where they all start morphing human, and then Axe comes galloping out of the woods like an enraged butler with bags of shoes to hand out to all the kids. It was so good. I
forgot about that. That was so funny.
It was such a weird thing.
Oh my god.
So funny.
Rage butler.
he was. He just came angrily galloping with shoes. I'm here to distribute these. It was just so good.
Oh my god, I love that.
I love Axe.
I love him too.
Is he still your favorite?
No. I think so.
That's totally fair. Oh man. All right. People, join us on Facebook, because our Andalite Bandalites group is starting to get bumpin'. And that is our group where we do polls, and I post weird stuff about what I do personally, which I'm realizing now as more strangers join is probably not good. But,
But we post, animal facts and cool articles we find.
Yeah.
Or memes. Or
memes. I like posting rejected quotes from the Kaycie quotes that I do a week before we release our episodes. So I sometimes post the rejects in that group, which are just as good, such as until the dice read 5 or 8 in the blade ship, you must wait, which was a fucking gem.
That's another Jumanji reference.
We're
talking about that.
Yep. So seriously, the Andalite Bandalites group is a lot of fun. And then we also have the Animorphs Anonymous page, which is where I post more, I don't want to say formal things, but it's a little more structured, and you just really get my bad jokes with every episode that we post. They're bad.
They're great.
They're terrible.
They're
Have
fine.
You read them?
They're fine.
They're awful.
Fine.
So that's where you can find us on Facebook. Where else can you find us?
You can find us at Twitter, which I've been really bad about updating, but I will stop that at once.
But the jokes are way better on Twitter.
I I try my hand at writing funny things, and sometimes it works out, I guess.
It does.
So come find us at Twitter.
The skunk one was particularly good.
What was the skunk one?
I forgot it.
I don't even remember what I wrote.
I just remember it being particularly good.
If you want to find out what the skunk one was, you can follow us at Animorphs Anon.
Yeah.
What was that?
That was work email. Just ignore it. Pretend it
Boo.
never happened.
Boo. Not my Animorphs podcast.
Not my Animorphs.
We also have a website, www.animorphsanonymous.com.
http://
Oh, yeah.
/ No, I'm kidding. Just go to animorphsanonymous.com.
Yeah, it's fine.
Google fix that. Yeah. We also have an Instagram, which is at Animorphs Anonymous. There's some jokes there. They're normally like kind of more, I don't know, better versions of what I post on the Facebook page. So we have that. We also, what the hell else do we have?
I think that's it for social media. Oh my god, it's been a while.
It has been a while.
As far as where you can find us for listening, you can find us at GooglePlay or iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher or Pocketcasts, or actually Matt Googled Animorphs Anonymous earlier today.
Yeah.
The top 20 hits, I think they're all us, so you can find us in the Google or the Bing or the other search engine.
The Ask Jeeves.
Is that still around?
I have no idea.
The Yahoos.
The Yahoos, for sure. Let's just name search engines we know now.
The MSN.
That's a search engine?
It has a search function.
Oh, you can use Opera, I guess.
You can use AOL.
Ooh, AOL.
Talk about the 90s.
Yeah, I still have some of those CDs laying around.
Earthlink.net.
Oh, God. Please don't use that. Please, whatever you do. Oh, God.
Anyway, you can find us anywhere because we're awesome.
Yeah, and we've almost taken over. Oh, you know what? We've taken over all the Animorphs Anonymous links except for one, which is our email, which if you want to send to us is anonymousanimorphs@gmail.com instead of Animorphs Anonymous, because that's the only area where the Yerks completely took over.
Yeah, we lost that battle.
We did lose that battle, but we have not lost the war. And if you email that address, I have a really good response rate.
Yeah.
I write goddamn dissertations back to you. So a lot of people email us and they're like, I'm really sorry I went on for a while. And I am like, please.
And then you're like, here's 5 pages.
I know, right? I'm like, let me outdo you. No, I'm kidding. That's not why I respond. I think it is mostly me on email just because I'm worried about Kaycie getting spoilers. So she reads them, but not until I approve them.
She has to screen them first.
Yeah, I screen them. But yeah, I love longer-winded emails. I will respond with a long-winded email. I am totally happy to keep up communication. So please, if you are choosing to email us and you're like, oh God, it's going to go on for a while, do not worry. It's wonderful. I love it. And thank you to everyone who has emailed me already.
Woo! Shall we wrap this up?
Let's wrap it up. What can we say from this book? Let's go and find ourselves in our bed talking to our past selves from when we started this podcast, going, truly, it will be fine. Episode 3 won't delete all of itself and make you hate your life. It'll be a good time.
Oh, no. That's a dark time.
That was a dark time from our histories.
God.
Yeah. But now we're back.
Yay.
So let's
all right.
Head out.
All right. Bye, everybody. We'll see you next time for Cassie's book.
Goodbye, audience. I will only ask you one thing. Are you happy?